Alright, so is Yuji heavenly restricted or what? The people want to know, Gege. Enough with the subtle clues. It's like right there in our face, but at the same time, nobody's talking about it. So, like, what's going on? Is this man heavenly restricted? Let's talk about it. Also, spoiler warning, if you're not caught up on the manga, maybe head out, maybe stay. I'd appreciate the engagement. You know what? I want you to stay, but if you don't want any spoilers, we'll see you in the next one. Alright, so first of all, when I say heavenly restriction, I'm specifically referring to the one that Toji and Maki have, where their cursed energy is restricted in exchange for physical prowess. There are other heavenly restrictions out there, like Mekamaru's and probably even others, right? But this is the one we're talking about in reference to Yuji. Now, about this heavenly restriction is there's seemingly a whole spectrum of them. In Toji's case, he was literally the first one that was ever known of that literally had zero cursed energy. And in exchange for that, he was a physical demon, right? However, people like Maki have existed for a long time. Yuki even comments on, researching all of them in her endeavors, right? Where people have way less cursed energy, but not zero in exchange for physical prowess. Now, again, Maki started out this way, but ultimately she became like Toji after Mai died and took the little bit of cursed energy she had, so then she was fully realized exactly like Toji was. So to cycle back now, could Yuji be heavenly restricted? Now clearly where he's at right now in the manga, he is not on Toji or awakened Maki's level. But I think there's a case to be made that he could easily be on the spectrum of heavenly restrictions, kind of like pre-awakened Maki. So let's address what we've seen. So does Yuji possess supernatural physical prowess in exchange for a restriction on his cursed energy? Well, he's throwing a car here, so you tell me. Now, to be fair, the car thing happened after he ingested Sukuna's finger and after he was training as a sorcerer. So let's go all the way back to literally chapter 1. What do we see Yuji do? Break records whimsically. He literally breaks the shot put record by throwing it like a baseball. I don't know if you're familiar with shot put, but that's not how you throw it, and he broke the record that way. And what did Megami say? Oh, I wonder if he's like Maki. And then not 5 panels later, Megami is also commenting on Yuji's speed. And I believe in the anime they go out of their way to show that he's going world record pace there as well. Again, this is in chapter 1. So clearly Yuji has physical prowess to a supernatural extent. And this is exactly in line with what we know about heavenly restrictions. Megami just compared him to Maki, and in fact, several points throughout this manga, Yuji is compared to Maki when people first see his physical prowess. So it's not subtle at all. But even with that being the case, I don't think it's ever been mentioned that Yuji might actually have a heavenly restriction. So why is that? How do you even tell if somebody has a heavenly restriction in this world? Like, how is that diagnosed? In somebody like Toji's case, who was born with zero, it's going to be pretty evident from the jump, right? Just because of how insane his physical prowess is. But also, he was born into a sorcerer family that puts a lot of focus on those things. It's going to quickly become evident when one of your children doesn't have any cursed energy when you're a big sorcerer family, right? Same thing happened with Maki, and this is why she was so, devalued. Not only was she a twin, but she had little cursed energy. So they're like, okay, heavenly restriction, especially in the footsteps of Toji, right? They knew what they were looking for. But somebody like Yuji, who's not from a sorcerer family, no one would have been around to notice, even if they can notice just naturally, right? Now you might be saying, well, somebody like Gojo with the 6 eyes, can he diagnose a heavenly restriction? Maybe, but at least in this case, Gojo never met Yuji before he ate the finger. And while we're on the subject of Yuji's cursed energy levels, pre-eating Sukuna's finger, Yuji barely had any, which would put him perfectly in line for a heavenly restriction, right? He didn't even have enough to see curses before he ate the finger. Now, before anybody says, I know that Yuji did see those curses before he ate the finger when he was helping Megami out, but that's only because it was like a near-death environment, which the story tells us even normal humans can see curses when they're approaching death. So that's why he could see them then. But then, after Yuji eats the finger, he can always see curses, right? So, Yuji previously had, like, heavenly restricted levels of cursed energy before eating that finger. Ultimately, the point of all of this is that everything lines up for him to have one, but it's just never been openly talked about. So, one reason for that could be he doesn't have one, so it's not relevant to talk about. The other reason could be maybe nobody could tell, for whatever reason. And then the third reason could be he does have one, but it's never been openly talked about from a writing standpoint because this is a reveal that Gege is saving for later, right? So let's explore that option. Now, you might be over there thinking we're already in speculation territory, but I got news for you. We weren't even scratching the surface because now we are about to dive straight into the deep end of speculation territory. So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. This is just me trying to collect all my random ideas here. But if you saw my video, I think it was last week, it doesn't matter, but it was about Sukuna's Heian era form. The forearms, the two mouths, the works, right? I made a video explaining why he might look like that. And in that video, I talk about how these two could be twins. And not only twins, but conjoined twins. And maybe even Sukuna took out Yuji in the womb, right? And, through the weird heavenly restriction, weird cursed energy, mojo jojo that's going on, that's how Sukuna got that crazy form. Now, if you're interested in all the in-depth information there, check out that video. I'll link it in the pinned comments if you're watching on YouTube. But I'll give you the quick rundown here. First of all, the only information we have about Sukuna's past or when he was young is this statement right here. I was born a cursed, unwanted little wretch. And we know twins are frowned upon in the Jujutsu world. Can you imagine what conjoined twins would be, especially if he did come out in little baby form the same way his true form looks? Two mouths, four arms, right? Like he would be viewed as an abomination, right? So I'm not saying that's why he said this, but that would at least make sense, right? So if that were the case, and they were twins, just like with Mai and Maki, how Maki had a heavenly restriction, but it wasn't fully realized, and she got an insane power boost when Mai died. Sukuna, similarly, if he was a conjoined twin and the conjoined twin died, could have gotten an insane power boost, which would explain not only his crazy form, but also just why he's him, right? He could be heavenly restricted levels of powerful, but clearly, imagine if Maki had died instead of Mai, the power-up Mai would have gotten. Mai isn't heavenly restricted, but she probably would have gotten an insane boost to her cursed energy and her, general ability, right? She probably would have become like Yorozu, but even stronger. So that's what I'm speculating happened with Sukuna. And we're taught all of this through the example of Maki and Mai, right? They're a specific set of twins that are viewed as one individual by the universe, by curse techniques. That's why Mai had one and Maki didn't. So in this hypothetical Yuji Sukuna scenario, that's why Sukuna has a curse technique, but Yuji does not. And also just from a meta standpoint, in terms of looking at the narrative as like a writer, you could introduce a concept like this with Maki and Mai to set up a reveal later on in the story. Us as readers are already familiar with everything that happens here. So if we find out that Sukuna is a twin with Yuji, it's like, oh shit, all these light bulbs start to click, right? This would also explain why there is such a resemblance in this family line. Sukuna does not look like Yuji just because he was in Yuji's body. In his own body, they look very similar. And if Sukuna and Yuji are twins, then it helps explain the links Kenjaku went to get that familial DNA. He's been experimenting for 1,000 years, iterating all along the way. We got the Curse Womb Death paintings, ultimately resulting in Yuji, who became a perfect vessel for Sukuna. That's probably not mere chance, right? If they are twins, conjoined twins at that, it almost makes sense that Yuji would be able to suppress Sukuna, right? Because on some level, they might have the same soul. If the universe views twins as one person, then they may share a soul to some extent, right? And that could explain how Yuji was out of commission in the most recent chapter, because in the previous chapter, he collapsed, was spitting up blood, was trying to heal himself, but couldn't find the injury. Maybe he was feeling the damage the Soul Split Katana did to Sukuna. Sukuna and Yuji being twins would also shed light on what Kenjaku meant by this panel here, where he said as long as Yuji and Sukuna are alive, the chain of curses will never end. He's the eye of the storm of the new age. But back to the heavenly restriction, something Sukuna says in the most recent chapter is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence. He is absolutely glazing Maki. He is so excited to be able to pit his jujutsu against her heavenly restriction. And he compares her to Yuji, saying, "You're not like the half-assed brat. You threw it all away." And really the only way to make sense of that comment is through the lens of heavenly restriction. He's comparing her to Yuji. Alright, just imagine that everything I've said up until this point is true. Now imagine if Yuji is able to fully realize his heavenly restriction in the same way Maki did. He would be an absolute problem. If this is true, then Yuji could be the pinnacle of heavenly restriction and Jujutsu at the same time. And with as excited as we've ever seen Sukuna over the chance to pit those two against each other in his fight with Maki, imagine he finds out Yuji can have both. Might then Yuji, the only one whose ideals, while opposite stack up in strength to Sukuna's, be the one to teach him about love?